All right, let's lock in. So, the new American dream, moving back in with your parents. That title, right? Okay, so picture this. A recent college grad, right? Diploma in hand, triumphantly moves all his stuff back to their childhood bedroom. Or picture this, a grandparent after decades of living um on their own, packs up their house and moves in down the hall from their grandkids, right? Wow, sounds familiar. Maybe it's happening in your house or your best friend's house, or you've seen it all over social media, right? For a long time too. So we thought of this as like a sitcom trope, a temporary situation. But what if I told you that this isn't temporary anymore? This is becoming the new American reality right now. We are in the middle of a quiet revolution in how we live, So the number of Americans living in multi-generational households, that's kids, parents, grandparents all under one roof, has greatly skyrocketed, and we're talking it's been quadrupled since the 1970s. So today, we're diving into this massive cultural shift that's happening, why it's happening, how our families making it work, without driving each other completely nuts, and we'll get into the super practical nitty gritty advice that you absolutely need to know if you're even thinking about doing this to yourself. I'm gonna go close my door. I'm gonna pause for a second. All right, there was a dog barking outside the window. So, um, let's shift down a little bit here. Follow the map here. So, the family reunion, right? That's a nice house. Imagine that, So, why is the classic 2.5 kids in the suburban house model, why is it fading, right? And this is big. Multi-layered family homes are coming back. It really boils down to the three huge pressures that everyone is feeling right now. Everyone. So first, um, and this is the big one. It's the financial squeeze right here. The five and the squeeze. And let's be honest, the economy right now is brutal. You know what I mean? You have recent college graduates with master's degrees and mountains of student debt who can't even afford a studio apartment in most cities. Tragic. The housing market is basically impossible for first time buyers. And for a lot of young adults, moving back home isn't a choice of failure. It's the only financial sane choice they can make. You know? Number two, right here, uh, it's the caregiving crunch, right? So there is a whole group of people out there called the sandwich generation, and they are literally sandwiched between two huge responsibilities: raising their own kids while also caring for their age's parents. And so that's like me taking care of my kids and then also taking care of my mom and dad, the sandwich generation. And for a lot of these people, it's very exhausting, it's very expensive, and emotionally draining. And it really is. For many, the only logical solution is to bring everyone under one roof. This big old house right here, right? Where they can support both the kids, the grandparents, the parents, everyone supports each other all in harmony at the same time, you know? And third is, the search for security. For older adults, living alone can be incredibly isolating and frankly a little scary. What happens if you fall, right? Who helps with the grocery rides to the doctor? Um, moving in with your adult children and grandkids offers security, companionship, and a defense against loneliness, But let's be real for a second. It's not always a big happy Hallmark movie family hug. The data shows this can be really hard. A recent study found that about 20% of adults in these homes say it's stressful all or most of the time. And that is a lot of tension, right? So, how do you get the benefits without the burnout, right? So, let's move on over here, right? Boom. We got I got my camera right there. Look at myself. So, the secret sauce, two homes in one, right? So, how do you make it this work? How do you get how do you oops, open that real quick. Um how do you get three generations of people with their own habits, schedules, and ideas about the right way to load a dishwasher to live together in that harmony we talked about, right? Well, let's take the Gibson family. The Gibson family, right? Example. Uh their story is basically, let's say, a blueprint on how to do this right. Jim and Darlene, right? Uh Head of the household. So a few years ago, Jim's mom, Cheryl, who was 79, right? She was living all by herself in rural Virginia. She was isolated, lonely, and couldn't easily get around. So the Gibsons decided to bring her to live with them, right? But they didn't just stick her in the spare bedroom though. They bought her a new type of house that builders are creating specifically for this trend. And it's a design from a company called Lennar, and they call it the next gen home, right? It's the next gen home, they call it. The concept, is actually very smart. It's essentially two homes in one, or two homes on one property, It's like a more imagine a shed, but instead of a shed, it's an actual home with a living room, um, bedroom, wash machine, dryer, the whole works to make a little house a house. Basically, yeah, it's a regular house. So they made this a huge game changer for the Gibsons. Cheryl now has her own independence. She bakes in her own kitchen, has her own friends over in her living room in that small house that's combined with her son, son's family, Jim and Darlene. She plays bingo. She's more active and healthier that she's been in years. And Darlene and Jim live in peace. They have peace of mind knowing that Jim's mom is just right next door. They can easily check up on her and she's right there. But, what's the real secret sauce is Darlene says it's boundaries and mutual respect. I got that down right here. It's very important. Their number one rule, expect for emergencies. You do not just walk into the other person's space, right? You come on. You got to knock first. You wait to be invited in. It sounds so simply simple, but the respect for privacy is the key to making the whole thing work. That's huge key. And the builders are catching on to this and what people want. The next gen homes now come up to a quarter of that builder's sales in Phoenix and across the country. Homes listed with an in-law suite. Um, you know, they call them ADUs, right? Are selling for about they have a 20% premium price. So like whatever, say a house is 400,000, there's going to be 20% more of that 400,000 for having that ADU. You know, they're in huge demand because the people want family nearby as people get older and older. You know, um, so moving on here. So we got your family move-in checklist. Very important. Very important. Very, very important. I think everybody agrees on that. You gotta be prepared. So, okay, so you're inspired. Let's say you're inspired by the Gibsons. You're thinking this might be the answer that your family, before you even think about what calling a move-in truck, you need to sit down and have a serious family meeting. This is the stuff that's kind of awkward to talk about, but it absolutely is negotiable if you want to succeed, you know? So pretty much right here is your agenda. You know, you got rule number 1, get it in writing. Like if you're thinking about doing the suite, you got to get a cohabitation agreement. I know it sounds super formal, but think of it like a prenup for your living situation. It's not uh distrust. It's about making sure everyone is making sure is on the same page. You write down who pays for what, the mortgage, utilities, groceries, uh, who's responsible for which chores, you know, what are the house rules? It's an agreement, you know? And then you got so I would say most importantly, it needs also for this agreement, it needs an exit strategy. Let's put that down right here. Let's put down um plus exit strategy. Oops, see daisy. Oh, that's all right. Didn't mean to cap it, but exit strategy. What happens if someone gets, God forbid, divorced, right? Passes away, needs to move to like an actual assisted living facility, right? Or just decides this isn't working anymore. You need a clear, fair plan for how to untangle the finances and property before it becomes a messy emotional fight. You know, it's very important. So let's go to rule number 2 now. You got to talk about the deed. Okay, very important. This is a big one. You know, whose name is actually going to be on the title of the house? You know, um, an attorney told me, uh, you need to understand the difference between being joint tenants and tenants in common. And these are two very different things you have to understand, you know. So being a joint tenant, if one owner passes away, right, the other one automatically gets the whole house. Simple. Joint, right? Like a wishbone. Break off one, the other one's more dominant. You know what I mean? Uh and then you have tenants in common, right? Tenants in common. Uh if one owner passes away, their share of the house goes to their heirs, like their other kids. This could mean you suddenly co-own your home with your brother-in-law, who you can't stand. You need to decide what's right for your family. You know, you got to figure that out. Let's jump on to rule number 3 here. So, create a team emergency fund. Very important. A lot of people don't do this. Things are gonna break. The water heater will die. The roof will leak. A nonprofit that advocates for these kind of things suggests that and everyone in the house contributes to a shared emergency fund to cover these big unexpected repairs. You know, the roof. the roof doesn't care whose side of the house it's on when it starts leaking. It's everyone's problem. Mold is going to get everywhere. Like that stuff it creeps on everything fast, right? So those 3 rules, take a screenshot if you want. Very important. Or come back to this video. So let's move on to family, to what you guys closing out here. So this explosion in generational living is so much more than a statistic. It's a huge shift in how Americans are defining family and home, right? It's a trend that's born out of financial necessity, and it needs for care, but it's only being made successful by smart home design and, most importantly, by open and honest communication and a deep respect for everyone's boundaries. Very important. um yeah, it's a huge throwback to an older way of living, but updated to our modern complicated world that we're living in right now. So I really want to, hear from you guys on this one. Are you living in a multi-generational home? What's your number one tip for making this work? Let us know. Tell us all in the comments. Or are you thinking about doing this? What's your biggest fear? What's your question? Share some wisdom down in those comments. And as always, if this video gave you something to think about, do me a huge solid one. Hit that like and subscribe button um, for more deep dives into the financial world and history and news about what's happening. I'll see you in the next one. So, I'll see you guys later, okay?